Have you ever stopped to think about why some people seem to attract money with ease, while others, no matter how hard they try, always stay in the same place financially? Is this just a matter of luck, opportunity, or is there something much deeper happening behind the scenes in your mind that you haven't noticed yet? What you're going to discover in the next few minutes could completely change how you see your relationship with money. And more than that, it might finally show you why you've been repeating the same financial patterns year after year, even when you swear you're going to change. There's an invisible force operating inside you, a belief system so old and ingrained that you don't even realize it's in charge, deciding how much money you deserve to earn, how much you can save, and even how you feel when you see someone else prospering. In this video, we're going to dive deep into the psychology of abundance and expose this pattern that keeps millions of people trapped in a limited financial reality. And you're going to understand exactly how your thoughts, your emotions, and your deepest beliefs are creating your material reality at this very moment. Get ready, because what comes next isn't empty theory. It's a real map of how your mind was programmed since childhood and how that programming continues to control your financial decisions to this day. But most importantly, you're going to discover how to deprogram all of this and finally make room for a new reality of prosperity. Stay with me until the end, because the last part contains the key that can unlock all of this in your life. So don't skip anything. Watch carefully and prepare yourself to question everything you believed about money until now. Let's start from the beginning, and I want you to be completely honest with me and with yourself right now, okay? Answer me mentally or even out loud if you're alone. When you think about money, what's the first feeling that comes? Is it lightness, joy, possibility, or is it a tightness in your chest, worry, heaviness? This automatic emotional response isn't random. It was built over years and years of conditioning. And what's most fascinating is that most people don't even realize they're carrying this conditioning. They think it's simply part of who they are, but it's not. It's part of what was installed in them. Think with me. When you were a child, what did you hear about money? Were they phrases like, "Money doesn't grow on trees," "We're not rich to be spending like that," "You have to work hard to get things," or maybe, "Rich people are dishonest," "Money doesn't bring happiness, what matters is having health"? Each of these phrases, which seems harmless, which seems like just a casual comment from your parents or grandparents, actually planted a deep seed in your subconscious, and that seed grew, took root, spread out, and today forms an entire tree of beliefs that governs your financial life without you realizing it. Can you see this? Can you see how what you heard 20, 30, 40 years ago is still echoing inside you, still shaping your choices, still limiting what you believe is possible? Now, let's go even deeper, because conditioning doesn't just come from words. It also comes from what you saw, from the experiences you lived, from the environment where you grew up. If you grew up seeing your parents fighting over money, living stressed out, complaining about bills, saying the month doesn't balance out, what do you think your brain learned about money? It learned that money is a source of conflict, stress, worry. So unconsciously, even if you say you want more money, a part of you associates money with pain, with fighting, with tension. And guess what happens? You sabotage your own attempts to prosper because your subconscious is trying to protect you from that pain. It's trying to keep you away from what it learned causes suffering. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? But that's exactly how it works. Your brain doesn't want you to suffer, so it keeps you in the comfort zone, even if that zone is one of scarcity. Because at least it's a familiar, known, predictable scarcity. Now tell me, have you noticed that no matter how much money you earn, it never seems to be enough? There are people who were earning $1,000 and living tight, then started earning $3,000 and continued tight, then $5,000 and the situation stays the same. Why? Because the problem isn't in the amount of money coming in. It's in the internal financial thermostat you carry. It's as if you have an invisible limit programmed inside you that says, "This is the maximum I deserve. This is the maximum I can manage. This is my ceiling." And whenever you get close to exceeding that ceiling, something happens. An emergency, an unexpected expense, an impulsive decision, something that pulls you back inside the limit, back to the known zone. Have you lived this? Have you had the feeling that whenever things start to improve, something pulls you back? This mechanism is called financial self-sabotage, and it's much more common than you imagine. But the question is, why do we do this? Why do we sabotage our own abundance? The answer lies in identity, in how you see yourself, in the story you tell about yourself. If deep down you identify as someone who is poor, who comes from a poor family, who always struggled, who never had luck with money, then every time you start to prosper, you enter internal conflict because that doesn't match your identity, doesn't match the story you tell about yourself. So your subconscious does everything to bring you back to the known narrative, to the old identity, even if that identity limits you, even if it prevents you from growing. Do you understand what I'm saying? Can you see how your own self-image can be the biggest barrier between you and the abundance you say you want? Let's talk now about guilt, because this is one of the most destructive feelings when it comes to money, and many people don't even realize they carry guilt. But it's there, hidden, operating behind the scenes. Where does this guilt come from? It comes from distorted religious messages that say money is dirty, that the rich won't enter heaven, that poverty is virtuous. It comes from an education that glamorizes suffering and condemns pleasure, that says you have to suffer to deserve, that good things are only for those who work really hard. And then what happens? You feel guilty for wanting more, guilty for wanting to live well, guilty for desiring comfort, luxury, freedom, as if that were wrong, as if you were selfish or superficial for wanting prosperity. Have you felt this? Have you felt guilty for wanting to earn more money? Have you been afraid of being judged, of people thinking you're greedy, materialistic, shallow? This guilt is a silent poison that corrodes any possibility of you attracting abundance, because you cannot attract what you reject. You cannot receive what you judge. You cannot become what you condemn. So if deep down you believe that rich people are bad, that money corrupts, that wanting prosperity is a sin, you will unconsciously repel money. You'll create barriers. You'll find ways not to prosper, because prospering would be betraying your values, would be becoming what you despise, and nobody wants to become what they despise, right? So guilt keeps you trapped, keeps you small, keeps you in scarcity, and you don't even realize it. Because all of this happens on an unconscious level, on a level you can't see clearly unless you start investigating, questioning, looking inward with honesty. Now I want you to think about something. What do you believe about rich people? Be honest. When you see someone driving an expensive car, living in a big house, traveling to incredible places, what goes through your head? Admiration or envy? Inspiration or resentment? Do you think, that's cool, I want that too? Or do you think they must be dishonest, must have stepped on someone, must be unhappy inside? Pay attention to this, because the way you see other rich people reveals exactly what you believe about wealth. And if you have resentment, envy, judgment, you're creating an energetic and psychological barrier between you and money. You're telling your subconscious, I don't want to be like these people. And if you don't want to be like them, you won't allow abundance into your life, because for you, abundance is associated with something negative, with something you reject. This is one of the most important reprogrammings you need to do. You need to start seeing wealth as something positive, as something you admire, that you celebrate, that you desire in a healthy way, without guilt, without envy, without judgment. When you see someone prosperous and feel genuine joy, when you can say, how inspiring, this shows it's possible, I can too, then you start aligning your mind with the frequency of abundance. You start opening space. You start allowing. You start attracting. But let's be practical now, because it's not enough to just understand the theory. You need to apply it. You need to act. You need to make different decisions if you want different results. And the first decision is to take total responsibility for your financial reality. I know this might hurt a little. I know it's easier to blame the economy, the government, the boss, luck, circumstances. But while you blame external factors, you put yourself in a victim position, and victims have no power. Victims have no control. Victims just wait for things to change, for someone to come save them, for luck to turn, but nothing changes because you're not in command. Now, when you take responsibility, when you say, my financial reality is the result of my beliefs, my thoughts, my choices, and if I change them, I change my reality, then you recover the power, then you become the creator of your life and no longer the victim of circumstances. Do you understand the difference? So the question I want you to ask yourself now is, am I really ready to take total responsibility for my financial life? Am I ready to stop blaming and start creating? Because if the answer is yes, everything changes from here. But if the answer is no, if you still want to hold on to excuses, justifications, but it's that, then you'll continue exactly where you are. And that's okay, everyone in their own time. But be honest with yourself about where you are and what you really want. Let's talk now about scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset. Because this is a fundamental distinction and many people live in scarcity without realizing it. They think they're being prudent, responsible, realistic, but actually they're being limited. They're operating from fear, from lack, from need. Scarcity mindset is one that sees the world as a place of limited resources, where if someone wins, someone loses, where there isn't enough for everyone, where you need to compete, need to protect yourself, need to hoard, need to be afraid of losing. It's that mindset that makes you feel anxious when you see someone prospering because unconsciously you think there's less left for you, that the slice of the pie got smaller. Abundance mindset, on the other hand, is one that sees the world as a place of infinite possibilities, where there's enough for everyone, where one person's prosperity doesn't diminish another's, where you can celebrate others' success because you know it doesn't affect yours at all, where you trust, where you feel secure, where you operate from generosity and not from fear. Which of these mindsets do you live in? Because look, scarcity mindset attracts more scarcity. It's law. It's how it works. If you live afraid of lack, you attract situations where there is lack. If you live clinging, you repel the flow. If you live thinking you don't have enough, you create more insufficiency. It's a vicious cycle. Abundance mindset, on the other hand, attracts more abundance. The more you recognize what you already have, the more you feel grateful. The more you act with generosity, the more you expand, the more you attract, the more you receive. It's a virtuous cycle. So where do you want to live? And look, changing mindset isn't simply thinking positive. It's not pretending everything's fine when it's not. It's not denying reality. It's much deeper than that. It's a shift in perception. It's starting to see opportunities where before you saw obstacles. It's starting to trust where before you only had fear. It's starting to act from possibility and not from limitation. How do you do this? First, you pay attention to your thoughts. You observe how many times a day you think things like, I don't have money for this, I can't, it's too expensive, it's not possible, it's hard. And each time you catch these thoughts, you question them. You ask, is this really true or is it just a belief? Is there another way to see this? What could I do to create a solution? You replace I can't with how can I? You replace I don't have with how can I have? You replace it's impossible with what would it take to make this possible? It seems simple, and it is, but simple doesn't mean easy. It requires practice, it requires awareness, it requires you to take responsibility for what you think and what you say. Because your words create your reality, your thoughts shape your experience, and if you want a different reality, you need to think and speak differently. There's also something that most people don't realize, which is the energy you emit when it comes to money. And I'm not talking about something mystical or esoteric. I'm talking about something very real, the emotional vibration you carry. If you live anxious, worried, stressed about money, you're emitting a frequency of need, of fear, of lack, and that frequency attracts situations that confirm more need, more fear, more lack. Now, if you can feel at peace with money, if you can trust, if you can feel grateful for what you already have while desiring more, you're emitting a frequency of abundance, of security, of fullness, and that frequency attracts situations that confirm more abundance, more security, more fullness. This isn't magic, it's psychology, it's neuroscience, it's how your brain works. You attract what you vibrate, you create what you feel. So if you want to change your financial reality, you first need to change your emotional state in relation to money. How do you do this? By cultivating gratitude. And I know you've heard this 1,000 times, but listen to me. Gratitude isn't just saying thank you, it's really feeling it. It's really recognizing it. It's stopping and looking at your life and noticing everything that already exists, everything that already works, everything you already have that many people would like to have. It can be your health, your family, your home, your food, your work, your freedom. Everything counts. And the more you focus on what you already have, the more you feel abundant. And the more you feel abundant, the more you attract abundance. It's a circle that feeds itself. The opposite is also true. The more you focus on what's lacking, the more you feel poor. And the more you feel poor, the more you attract poverty. So where's your focus? Now let's talk about something few people have the courage to admit, which is the attachment to suffering, to the victim role, to the story of difficulty. There are people who unconsciously don't want to leave scarcity because scarcity became part of their identity, became the excuse for everything that goes wrong, became the way to get attention, compassion, validation. Oh, poor thing. He went through so much. She suffered so much. His life is so hard. And in some distorted way, this gives a sense of identity, a role, a narrative. If you grew up being the poor thing, being the one who always struggled, it's scary to become prosperous because then you lose that role, you lose that identity, and then who are you? Have you stopped to think if somehow you're attached to your story of struggle, of difficulty, of scarcity? If somehow you're afraid to let it go because then you don't know who you are anymore? It's a difficult reflection, I know. But it's necessary. Because while you're attached to your victim story, you won't be able to write a new story as protagonist, as creator, as winner. You need to be willing to let go, to allow yourself to be a new version of yourself, to allow yourself to prosper, to allow yourself to win, even if that means losing the attention you received for being pitiful, even if that means people stop feeling sorry for you. Because the truth is that compassion based on pity doesn't build anything. What builds is respect, is admiration, is inspiration, and you only get that when you take control of your life and start creating results, understand? Let's touch now on a very practical point, which is your concrete relationship with money, how much you really know about your own financial life. Answer me, do you know exactly how much you earn per month? Do you know exactly how much you spend? Do you know where every penny goes? Do you have control, clarity, organization? Or do you kind of live in the dark, not really knowing, not controlling, spending without thinking, getting to the end of the month without understanding where the money went? Because, look, you can't manage what you don't measure. You can't improve what you don't know. So if you don't have clarity about your financial life, you're literally navigating in the dark. And then it's no use having an abundance mindset. It's no use reprogramming beliefs. You also need to have organization, discipline, practical awareness. Many people avoid looking at their own financial life because they're afraid, they're ashamed, they're anxious, they prefer not to know, they prefer to pretend it's not that bad. But this avoiding only makes things worse, only increases the chaos, only diminishes your power. Now, when you have the courage to sit down, to open the accounts, to see the numbers, to face reality, no matter how uncomfortable it may be, you gain power, you gain control, you gain the possibility to change. Because then you know exactly where you are. You know what needs to be cut, what needs to be increased, what needs to be adjusted, and then you can make conscious choices. Instead of just reacting, just despairing, just feeling powerless. So if you don't do this yet, start today. Grab a notebook, a spreadsheet, an app, whatever, and write down everything, absolutely everything. How much comes in, how much goes out, where it goes. And do this every day, every single day, without exception. Because awareness is the first step to transformation. You don't transform what you don't see. And look, when you start doing this, something interesting happens. You start noticing patterns. You start seeing unconscious spending. You start identifying leaks. You start understanding your financial behavior. And with that understanding, you can start changing. You can start making different choices. You can start creating a different reality. There's a powerful concept called pay yourself first that many people ignore, but that's fundamental for building wealth. What do most people do? They receive their salary, pay all the bills, spend on everything they need and want, and if there's anything left over, then they save. But guess what? There's never anything left over, or very little is left over, because the natural tendency is to spend everything that's available. Now, when you reverse this, when you decide that as soon as you receive, you're going to set aside a percentage for yourself, for your future, for your equity, before paying any bill, before spending on anything, you're telling your subconscious, I am a priority. My future is important. I deserve to build wealth. And this changes everything. It changes your relationship with money. It changes your financial self-esteem. It changes your results. How much should you set aside? Ideally at least 10%, but if you can't, start with 5, with 2, with 1. The amount matters less than the habit. What's important is to create the habit of paying yourself first, of honoring your future, of building your equity, and over time you'll increase it, you'll adjust it, you'll evolve. Now, where do you put this money? It can't be in the checking account where you access every day because the temptation will be too great. You need to put it in a separate place, in a savings account, in an investment, in a place you don't see, that you don't touch, that you forget exists. Because this money isn't for spending, it's for accumulating, it's for multiplying, it's for building your financial freedom. And the more you accumulate, the more you see it growing, the more powerful you feel, the more capable you feel, the more you believe you can prosper, and that belief feeds more prosperity. Understand the cycle? Let's talk now about investment, not just of money, but of time, energy, attention. Where are you investing your life? Where are you putting your focus, your energy, your time? Because all of this is a resource, all of this is capital, and just like poorly invested money doesn't give returns, poorly invested time and energy don't either. Are you investing in yourself? Are you investing in learning, in growing, in developing yourself, in qualifying yourself? Or are you just spending your time on distractions, on complaints, on things that don't take you anywhere? Because look, the best way to increase your income is to increase your value. And you increase your value when you invest in knowledge, in skills, in personal development, when you become a more capable person, more qualified, more valuable to the market, to others, to yourself. There are people who complain. They earn little, but don't do anything to increase their value. They don't study. They don't qualify themselves. They don't seek to improve. They just wait for someone to recognize them, for someone to raise their salary, for luck to appear, but it doesn't work that way. The market pays for the value you deliver, and if you want to earn more, you need to deliver more value. Simple as that. So the question is, what are you doing to increase your value? What courses are you taking? What books are you reading? What skills are you developing? What problems are you learning to solve? Because each new skill is a new tool. Each new knowledge is a new possibility. Each problem you learn to solve is a new service you can offer. And the more you have to offer, the more you can earn, the more you can prosper, the more you can grow. And I'm not just talking about academic education. I'm talking about any useful knowledge, any practical skill. It could be learning to sell, to negotiate, to communicate better, to lead, to manage time, to invest, to be an entrepreneur, to create content, to program, to design, anything that adds value, that solves problems, that helps people. Because money flows to those who solve problems, to those who add value, to those who make others' lives easier. So the more you develop your capacity to do this, the more money you attract. It's simple, it's direct, it's fair. Now, there's another side of this coin that's equally important, which is taking care of your energy, your health, your balance. Because it's no use earning a lot of money if you're exhausted, sick, unhappy, if you've sacrificed your health, your relationships, your peace. Because then what kind of wealth is that? Real wealth is having money, yes, but also having health. Having peace, having good relationships, having time, having freedom, having joy, having purpose. So while you build your financial prosperity, don't forget to also build your emotional, spiritual, relational, physical prosperity. Because all of this is part of the complete package. All of this is real wealth. Do you take care of yourself? Do you sleep well, eat well, exercise, rest? Do you have moments of leisure, of pleasure, of connection? Or do you live in the rush, in stress, on autopilot, thinking that one day when you have enough money, then you'll rest, then you'll enjoy? But that day never comes because there's always one more goal, one more bill, one more objective, and in the end, you live to work instead of working to live. Don't fall into this trap. Live now, take care of yourself now, value your health now, enjoy your life now, because tomorrow might be too late, because money you might be able to recover, but not time, sometimes not health, sometimes not relationships. So balance, integrate, build a prosperous life in all areas, not just financially. Let's talk now about generosity, about giving, about sharing, because there's a universal law that says the more you give, the more you receive. And I know this seems contradictory. I know that when you're in scarcity, the last thing you want to do is give. You want to hold on, keep, protect. But that's exactly where the secret lies. When you can give, even having little, you're telling the universe, your subconscious, I trust, I have abundance, I don't operate from fear. And that attitude, that energy, attracts more abundance to you. That's how it works. Now, I'm not telling you to go out donating everything you have irresponsibly. I'm talking about conscious generosity, about helping who you can help, about sharing what you have, whether it's money, time, knowledge, attention, affection, whatever. Because the act of giving takes you out of the scarcity mindset and puts you in the abundance mindset, makes you feel prosperous, makes you feel powerful, makes you feel that you have enough to share. And that feeling is magnetic. It attracts more of the same. There are people who live so closed off, so clutching, so afraid of losing that they don't let anything in, because the same hand that doesn't give also doesn't receive. The same energy that holds also blocks. So if you want to receive more, learn to give more. Learn to circulate the energy. Learn to trust the flow, because money is flow. It's not stock. Money needs to circulate, needs to move. And the more you allow this movement, the more you prosper, the more you grow, the more you expand. Another important thing is your relationship with deservingness, because there are many people who deep down don't believe they deserve prosperity, don't believe they deserve to earn well, live well, have good things. And this comes from low self-esteem, from a history of rejection, abandonment, criticism, comparison, where you learned you're not enough, you're not good enough, you need to prove your worth, and then you live trying to prove, trying to compensate, trying to deserve. But you never feel deserving because deep down, the wound continues open, continues saying you're no good, you're not worth it, you don't deserve. Do you carry this? Do you feel this? Because if you feel it, you need to heal, you need to reframe, you need to understand that your value doesn't depend on what you do, what you achieve, what you have. Your value is intrinsic. You're valuable by the simple fact of existing, of being who you are. You deserve abundance. You deserve prosperity. You deserve to live well, not because you're perfect, not because you proved something, but because you're a worthy, capable, deserving human being, period. When you internalize this, when you really believe this, everything changes. Because then you stop sabotaging yourself, stop diminishing yourself, stop accepting less than you deserve, and you start demanding more, seeking more, creating more, attracting more, because you know you deserve it, you know you're capable, you know you can. How do you work on this? Through affirmations, mental reprogramming, therapy, self-analysis, forgiveness, acceptance, self-love. You look at yourself in the mirror and say, I am enough, I am capable, I deserve prosperity, I deserve abundance, I deserve to live well. And you repeat this every day, several times a day, until you start believing it, until you start feeling it, until this becomes part of who you are, because repetition creates belief, and belief creates reality. So repeat, reprogram, rebuild your self-image, rebuild your self-esteem, rebuild your sense of deservingness, because this is the foundation of everything. Without this, nothing works. With this, everything becomes possible. Let's also talk about courage, about risk, about leaving the comfort zone, because financial growth requires this. It requires you to do new things, try different paths, risk, dare, trust, and that's scary. It's natural. Everyone is afraid of the unknown. Everyone prefers to stay in the safe, the known, the comfortable. But the problem is that comfort doesn't generate growth. Excessive security doesn't generate expansion. If you want different results, you need to do different things, and doing different things is uncomfortable. It's scary, it's risky, but it's necessary. Are you willing to do this? Are you willing to leave your comfort zone? Are you willing to try something new even with fear? Are you willing to risk, to invest, to be an entrepreneur, to change, even without guarantee it will work? Because look, there's no guarantee. There's no total security. You can do everything right and still fail, or you can risk and it works out great. Life doesn't come with an instruction manual, doesn't come with a guarantee. So at some point, you need to trust, you need to take a leap, you need to act even without having all the answers, even without knowing if it will work. Because that's how it works. That's how you grow. That's how you discover what you're capable of. That's how you build something bigger than you imagined was possible. There's a phrase that says the biggest risk is not risking anything. And it's true. Because when you don't risk anything, you don't gain anything. You stay stagnant. You stay trapped. You stay small. And then at the end of life, you look back and regret not what you did, but what you didn't do. The chances you didn't take, the dreams you didn't pursue, the opportunities you let pass by out of fear, and then there's no going back. You can't recover the lost time. You can't relive the years you wasted in the comfort zone, so don't let that happen. Risk, try, act, even with fear, because everyone has fear. The difference is that some act despite the fear and others let fear paralyze them. And you, what do you choose? Now I want to talk about patience, about time, about process, because there are many people who want immediate results, want to get rich overnight, want to win the lottery, want a miracle. But sustainable wealth doesn't work that way. Real wealth is built with time, with consistency, with small actions repeated day after day, month after month, year after year. It's a process, it's a journey, it's not a single event, it's not an explosion, it's a construction brick by brick. And this requires patience, requires discipline, requires that you continue even when you don't see immediate results, even when it seems nothing is changing, because it is changing, just invisibly, just underground. And one day this comes to the surface. One day you harvest what you planted, but only if you don't give up midway, only if you continue planting, watering, caring, trusting the process. Do you have patience? Can you trust the process? Can you continue doing the right thing even without seeing immediate results? Or do you give up easily, get frustrated quickly, get discouraged when you don't see change in the first week, the first month? Because look, if you give up easily, you'll never get anywhere. Because everything worthwhile takes time. Everything solid takes time to build, so breathe. Calm the anxiety, trust in time, trust the process, and continue, just continue. Because those who continue arrive. Those who give up stay where they are. And you, do you want to arrive or do you want to stay? There's also something important for you to understand, which is the difference between wealth and ostentation, between real prosperity and the appearance of wealth, because there are many people who seem rich but are drowning in debts, have a new car but don't have money to eat, have designer clothes but rent and owe everyone. This isn't wealth. This is illusion. This is ego. This is insecurity disguised as success. Real wealth is having equity, is having investments, is having passive income, is having an emergency fund, is having financial freedom, is being able to choose, is not depending on a salary, is not living in debt, is having peace, is having security, is having options. That's wealth. The rest is just facade, just theater, just compensation. So don't fall into this trap of wanting to seem rich. Focus on being truly rich, on building real wealth. And real wealth is often invisible, silent, discreet. Because those who have real money don't need to prove it to anyone, don't need to show off, don't need to display. Those who need to show usually don't have it. They're compensating. They're trying to convince others and themselves of something that isn't real. Do you want to be or do you want to seem? Because you can't be both. Either you focus on truly building or you focus on pretending, and pretending doesn't take you anywhere. It only sinks you in debts and frustrations. Now think with me. What's your purpose with money? Why do you want to prosper? What would you do with more money? Because if your only motivation is to consume, is to buy, is to spend, is to show off, you'll never get rich. Because the more you earn, the more you'll spend, and you'll stay in the same place. But if your purpose is to have freedom, is to help your family, is to build something, is to contribute, is to live peacefully, is to realize dreams, is to have options, then yes, you have a solid motivation, a motivation that will sustain you in difficult moments, that will give you direction, that will give you meaning, and that motivation will take you far, will make you build something real, something lasting, something worthwhile. What's your why? Why do you want money? What difference would it make in your life? And more importantly, what difference would it make in the lives of those you love, of those you can help? Because when your purpose is bigger than you, when it involves other people, when it involves contribution, it becomes stronger, more powerful, more motivating. And then you don't give up no matter what happens because you have a strong why. You have a bigger reason. You have something worth fighting for, and that changes everything. That gives you strength, gives you resistance, gives you persistence. Let's touch now on a delicate but essential point, which is your relationship with work. Because many people hate working, see work as punishment, as obligation, as something you have to do to survive but that you do anything to avoid. And when you have this relationship with work, you'll never truly prosper because you're in conflict. You want money but hate the means to get it. You want the result but reject the process. And this creates an internal contradiction that sabotages everything. Now, when you find work that gives you pleasure, that has meaning, that's aligned with your values, with your talents, with your purpose, work stops being work and becomes expression, becomes contribution, becomes joy. And then you can't wait to start. You work with energy, with enthusiasm, with passion, and this reflects in your results. This attracts prosperity. This takes you to another level. Do you like what you do? Do you feel fulfilled with your work? Or are you just surviving, just enduring, just waiting for Friday, just waiting for retirement? Because if that's it, you're wasting your life. You're exchanging your time, which is the most precious resource you have, for money, but without joy, without meaning, without purpose. And that's not worth it, no matter how much you earn. So if you're not happy with what you do, change. Look for something different. Invest in yourself. Qualify yourself. Discover what gives you pleasure, what gives you meaning, and go after it. Because life is too short for you to spend most of it doing something you hate just for money. Because in the end, money without happiness is worth nothing. It doesn't buy peace, doesn't buy health, doesn't buy fulfillment, doesn't buy meaning. There's a powerful question I want you to ask yourself. If you had all the money in the world and didn't need to work to survive, what would you do? How would you spend your days? What would give you pleasure, meaning purpose? This answer reveals a lot about who you really are, about what really matters to you, and ideally, your work should be as close as possible to this, should be aligned with what you do even without needing to, because then you live with fullness, with authenticity, with joy, and that's real wealth, that's real success, far beyond how much money you have in the bank. Let's talk now about the power of your words, because you're creating your reality all the time through what you say. And most people don't realize this. They keep saying anything, complaining, whining, saying it's tough, that they don't have money, that life is hard, that nothing works out. And each time you say this, you're reinforcing that reality. You're programming your subconscious, you're emitting a vibration, you're creating more of the same. Now, when you change your words, when you start saying things like, I'm building my prosperity, I'm attracting abundance, I am capable, I deserve, it's getting better. You're creating a different reality. You're reprogramming your mind, you're changing your vibration, you're attracting different things. Pay attention to what you say, especially when it comes to money. Do you say it's tough, or do you say you're getting organized? Do you say you don't have money, or do you say you're building your wealth? Do you say you're poor, or do you say you're in the process of prosperity? It might seem silly, it might seem just semantics, but it's not. Words have power. Words create reality. And if you want to change your reality, you need to change your words. You need to stop decreeing scarcity and start decreeing abundance. You need to stop victimizing yourself and start empowering yourself. You need to stop complaining and start creating. Now, reaching the end, I want you to understand something fundamental. Everything I said here is useless if you don't apply it. If you just listen, nod your head, and don't change anything in your life. Because information without action is illusion. Knowledge without practice is entertainment. You can know everything about how to attract money. But if you don't change your thoughts, your beliefs, your emotions, your words, your actions, nothing will change. You'll continue exactly where you are. Maybe even worse, because now you know what you should do but aren't doing it, and that generates guilt, frustration, self-sabotage. So I challenge you, from now on, to apply at least one thing you learned here. It could be starting to control your spending. It could be practicing gratitude every day. It could be changing your words. It could be questioning your beliefs. It could be paying yourself first. It could be investing in yourself. It could be anything, but choose one and do it. Really do it. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today, now, because transformation happens in action, not in intention, not in thought, in concrete action, in real behavior change. And while you do this, observe. Pay attention to what changes inside you, to the opportunities that start appearing, to the ideas that start emerging, to the doors that start opening, because when you change inside, the world outside starts reflecting that change. It's law. It's how it works. You are the creator of your reality, and when you assume that power, when you really understand this and act from it, everything becomes possible. Everything transforms, and the prosperity you've been seeking starts flowing naturally, not because you forced it, not because you fought desperately, but because you aligned yourself, because you became compatible, because you opened yourself, because you allowed it. So tell me now, after all this, are you ready to take control of your financial life? Are you ready to let go of excuses, limiting beliefs, fears, self-sabotage? Are you ready to take responsibility, to act, to change, to grow? Because if you are, the entire universe conspires in your favor. Opportunities appear, doors open, paths reveal themselves, and you discover you were always capable, always deserving, always had power. You just didn't know. You just didn't believe. You just didn't allow. But now you know, now you believe, and now you can allow, can create, can prosper, can live the abundant life that was always your birthright, that was always available, that was always waiting for you to open up, to accept, to receive. And that moment is now. There's no perfect moment. There's no right time. There's now. There's you deciding, you choosing, you acting. And when you do that, everything changes. Your energy changes, your vibration changes, your reality changes, and the money you so desire starts flowing. Because you finally understood that the problem was never out there, was never the economy, was never the government, was never luck. It was always in here. It was always your programming, your beliefs, your relationship with money. And now that you know, now that you understand, you can change, can reprogram, can rebuild, can create a new reality, a reality of abundance, of prosperity, of freedom, of peace, of joy. And this isn't a dream, isn't fantasy. It's possible. It's real. It's achievable. It only depends on you, on your decision, on your discipline, on your consistency, on your courage to do differently, to think differently, to be different. Because if you continue being who you've always been, you'll continue having what you've always had. But if you allow yourself to evolve, to grow, to transform, you'll have access to a completely new reality. A reality that today maybe you can't even imagine, but that's there, waiting, available, ready to manifest as soon as you become compatible, as soon as you align, as soon as you open up. And that's my invitation to you today, to open up, to allow yourself to believe, to act, to create, and to prosper, because you deserve it. You're capable, and you just have to decide. You just have to start. You just have to take the first step, and the universe takes care of the rest. Doors open, paths reveal themselves, the right people appear, opportunities arise, and you discover that prosperity isn't a matter of luck, isn't a matter of privilege. It's a matter of mindset, of vibration, of alignment. And when you align, when you vibrate at the frequency of abundance, abundance comes. Simple as that, direct as that, real as that. So stop complicating, stop doubting, stop procrastinating, and start, act, change, transform. Because your life is waiting. Your prosperity is waiting. Your best version is waiting. waiting for you to decide you deserve it. You can, you will. And when you decide that for real, with all your heart, with all your conviction, with all your determination, nothing can stop you. No circumstance, no obstacle, no fear, because you became unstoppable. You became a force of nature. You became the conscious creator of your reality. And in that position, everything is possible. Everything is available. Everything can be created, including and especially the financial prosperity you desire, that you deserve, that you can have from now on, from your decision, from your action. So go, act, create, prosper, and live the abundant life that was always your destiny, your possibility, your right. Because you were born for this. You were made for this. You are this. You just need to remember. You just need to awaken. You just need to assume it. And the rest flows naturally, perfectly, abundantly, and you finally understand that it was never about deserving. It was always about allowing. It was never about conquering. It was always about aligning. It was never about fighting. It was always about flowing. And when you flow, everything flows. Money flows, opportunities flow, prosperity flows, and you live no longer in scarcity, no longer in struggle, no longer in fear, but in abundance, in peace, in trust, in the certainty that you are cared for, that you are supported, that you are prosperous, always were, always will be. You just needed to remember, and now you remembered. Now you know, now you can. So go and be prosperous, because that's your nature, that's your destiny, that's your truth.